Good afternoon, and welcome to this is the briefing on June the 1st, and we're actually, we're in consideration for our June the 1st meeting. Today is May 25th, I think. I'd like to maybe think ahead. We're good, and we're going to actually have a review of a briefing for the agenda on June 1st, and then we're going to have a budget review, kind of our work on the budget. And I believe we have a closed session at the end. So we are ready to go. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, board members and staff and guests. As the chairman said, we've got kind of a busy afternoon. We were going to kick it off with a bond update. On Tuesday, we were in the bond market in a big way. And Lee Plunkett's going to come up and talk about the results of that bond sale. In the last couple of meetings, he talked about the fortunate situation we find ourselves in, where we're AAA rated again for the number of times the last decade. But I'll turn it over to Lee.
Yes, thank you, County Manager, and sorry you got to see me again on this, but hopefully this will be the last time. We did sell our bonds on Tuesday. LGC sold them for us. And there before you are some statistics from the sale. As you can see there, I'm going to just kind of point all the way to the far right under the total in bold. So $139.6 million is going to be made available for project funds. So that's what we're going to use for all the different purposes. So schools, for SciTech, Parks and Rec, and then a little bit of county funding. So the all-in true interest cost, which is essentially our interest rate, for the 2/3 bonds was 3.6%. Our referendum bonds were a little lower, 3.56%, for a combined blended rate of 3.57%. So the winning bidder of our 2/3 bonds is Hilltop Securities, and the winning bidder from our referendum bonds is Morgan Stanley. And so we had 8 to 9 bidders on each, which was good, and according to our FA and to the folks we were on the call with, and even the bids were very tight, within a few basis points apart for the first 5 or 6. So a very competitive sale, which is good. The rates are a little bit higher than we expected. Unfortunately, with the fluctuating markets, it's driven the tax-exempt rates up a little bit. So that was a little bit unfortunate. Still a great sale. But what that has done, you've seen this slide before, and you see the estimated project fund column. And we had initially thought, or estimated, $139.9 million would be available for project funds. What actually came from the sale was $139.6 million. So we came up about $300,000 short of our estimate, and that was going to fall completely with the additional capacity that we can provide the schools. So that was the only somewhat negative part of the sale. I think if there's an option that we ever want to make it up in the future, there's definitely some interest earnings right now on our bond proceeds will be much higher than they have been historically. So that's a potential option if we wanted to make that $300,000 up.
Yeah, and I was actually going to ask you to talk a little bit about it, Lee, and I'm going to put you on the spot because I didn't mention it before, but in my opinion, it's just very unusual because over the last 15 years, if you look at what our idle funds that are invested in, and then what our bond cost is, that we've never had to worry about arbitrage because we were not going to earn more money on our idle cash than we were borrowing it for. And the federal government does not want you, they charge you arbitrage because they don't want local governments who are, to basically go borrow a whole bunch of money, put it in the bank, and then just make money on it. They want you to put those projects to work. But there is a fairly significant difference in what we're earning on our idle funds right now and what we're paying in debt. And so to this point, there's going to be some cash that will be subject to arbitrage, but it's just a really unique thing that I hadn't seen in 20 years, I don't think. So.
Yeah, when I first came on, we made one arbitrage payment. That was 15 years ago, or 14 years ago. So that's the only time I've seen that as an issue. So it's been a while.
Yeah. So there's an opportunity there. It does mean we're going to, in order to not pay arbitrage, we're going to have to actually get the money out more quickly, and so we've got to be strategic about that. The other reason why I wanted to just mention, maybe you talk a little bit about what you're seeing earnings on investment, but the budget that I'm going to present to you at the end of this meeting has a tremendous impact on it from interest earnings, because we were literally a year or so ago, we were earning.
Yeah, we were near zero on a lot of our available investments. Now we're near the 5% mark, so it's a huge, huge difference.
So it's overall a really, really good thing. And I think most folks looking at the market, in a very low interest market, we were still at 2% total interest cost. And even with the rates where they are now, just I think because of our credit situation, we're at 3.5%.
The AAA obviously helped. And yeah, historically, the 3.5% is still a strong rate.
Yeah, it's a good job.
Questions?
Got one question. What was your estimate on the, you ended up with the 3.57. What was your estimate?
We were at 3.44 was our estimate at the time. That was, was that December, I think, is when we first did the modeling. We saw a dip to about 3.25, and we were hoping it was going to stay there, but it shot back up and actually went over our initial estimate. So.
And there's no way for you to put a true opinion. This is truly your opinion. There's not a scientific backup on this, but how much do you think the impending debt crisis issue and the debt ceiling issue has created the volatile market that created this? I mean, is there an opinion on the cause and effect here?
Definitely an opinion, but yes. It did. The market volatility because of those debt talks have caused some issues, yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Lee, and thank you for your work. Lee's a lead on our HCM piece, particularly as it relates to payroll, and so he's going to go bury himself in that system effort, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well. All right, so that was the primary discussion item kind of before our agenda review. So let's go ahead and dive into the items for the consideration for the June 1st meeting. We have one public hearing item that Brian Gallimore came and presented last week. It's a public hearing pursuant to general statutes on a proposed ordinance granting a non-emergency ambulance franchise within Forsyth County. Glad to have Brian come back up and make that presentation again. Or if you've got questions, it's up to however y'all want to do that. Brian, to come up and.
Anybody have a desire? For me, I'm fine, but anybody else have one?
I don't need the discussion, but I would like to ask you, Dudley, if this is mainly because of personnel and lack of personnel.
Yeah, so for the last long time, we made a decision that we were going to go out and really open up the period for a period once a year where folks who were in the ambulance franchise business could basically submit an application for a franchise, and so we did that. And we did get some interest. I think Brian gets a lot of calls from companies, a lot of times startups, who want to go in this business. And sort of our posture has always been, if a company comes to us and they got to have a track record, they need a good solid business plan. And they need to show us that they can provide the service adequately. That we really haven't sort of regulated on the supply side of things. Really just it's open. It's kind of an open market, except for the fact that we do franchise. You need to know some communities really don't regulate this at all. I think our system is good because we do ask. For a non-emergency franchise to actually provide a service staff, a unit that can respond to us and supplement our services and all that. And Brian tracks that. And so, there is concern, and one of our providers is Lifestar. Mr. Hooch is actually in the audience today, and so you can ask him a question if you want to. The concern he raised, and I think I sent that to you, basically was. That it has been difficult from a business perspective, really based on labor market issues that we are experiencing, and that the franchises are experiencing. And, I'll never forget, Kevin High with Wake Forest Baptist Atrium said, "I'm coming after your paramedics." He was crystal clear about that. And so we all have been adapting to that labor market issue that we are all experiencing. I think the question really is, does it make sense to perhaps award a franchise, but perhaps award that franchise, in second quarter of next year, maybe effective January 1st, and let the things that we're doing to deal with the labor market issues, which are the EMT Academy, those kinds of things, really build things out. A lot of work with Forsyth Tech to enhance the number of folks that are coming through their training programs, our efforts to train advanced EMTs, because there is a lot of churn in the labor market. And I don't want to speak for Mr. Hoots, but the nature of his concerns, I think we're really, I feel like he feels like he's making progress with the labor market issues. I think we feel like we're making progress with it, but we're, our unit hour utilization still remains high, and so there's some, that would be a way of letting that labor market stabilize.
Mr. Chairman, would it be okay if Mr. Hoots came
That'd be great.
up and if we were to do this contract but delay it until January, would that be helpful to you?
Yeah, and so I do want to say, Mr. Hoots is here, also the applicant for the franchise services here. Brian, can you introduce the gentleman with medics that is here as well? And so you can ask both of them questions.
Yes. I'd like to introduce Mr. Scott Martin. He is the Western representative and the manager for MedX Incorporated out of Hosky, North Carolina.
Okay. And so if we could, I think the question was to Mike.
Right.
So Mr. Hoots, why don't you come up, and if you got a question for the other gentleman, that'd be good.
I think your question was, if you delay till next year, does that help? It certainly does help. But quite frankly, we're all struggling and vying for the same employees, and it's really hard to tell where we'll be next year at this time. I'm seeing progress right now, but we just don't know where that's going to end up.
Okay.
We feel like we've got all the assets to do the business, to keep our customers very happy, everything except for the people. And I don't think we're the only ones struggling with that. And that's what we need to get on top of. And I think when that happens, the hospitals will be happy. We'll be able to provide better services for the county, and it's a win.
Mr. Martin, would you like to say?
Yes, sir. So I've been in the business since 1978. Have had experience in Forsyth County. I've been with MedX for now over 4 years. We have a strategic plan to assist the citizens of this county. I've had conversations with case managers that have had patients that have been waiting for 24 to 48 hours. We're not coming in to step on anybody's toes. We do pay well. We maintain employees well. Yes, we have experienced some shortages, but we also maintain our employees well. So I'm a local individual to this county, have worked for this county, have been a director of another service in this county, so I do have a lot of experience within the county and the way that it operates. So our intention is to come and provide the service for this county to make sure that the citizens of this county are taken care of. No offense to any other private sector in this county. That's not our intention. Our intention is to work along with them, as well as EMS, to make sure that these customers and these patients are transported. We do feel the need. I see the need. My wife works for Wake Forest, so we understand that there is a need in this county, and we're here to provide that service. We already have a strategic plan in place. We have a pay scale in place. We've already purchased new vehicles, all brand new 2023 vehicles for this county. So everything that we have been asked to do, we are ready to provide that service for this county and for all the hospitals and the patients within the county.
Let me ask a question a different way. So what would a 6-month delay do to you?
To be quite honest with you, I'm not real sure. That would be up to the owner of our company. But at this moment, we are ready to provide the service. We've been coordinating with EMS to get ready for this, so we have everything in place to make sure we've already located a building for the service within the county. Like I said, we've already got all the equipment. The only thing that we would basically need to do is to hire the individuals and put them through orientation and boarding process and get them on the road. But as far as like waiting an additional 6 months, I'm not real sure. I would have to check with the owner of our company to see exactly what impact that would have. But I know that there is a need right now with me being local to here, as well as talking to some of the case managers within the hospital. There's a need now that needs to be taken care of, and we're here to provide that for you.
How many folks would you need to hire?
We would come in with probably 6 to 8 vehicles, so we would probably hire somewhere in the neighborhood of probably around 40 employees to get started, and then we would increase that as the need arises. We are ready to. We have plenty of vehicles and resources to us that we're able to provide the service to the county. So if we need to increase that to make sure that the other patients that are not being taken care of are taken care of, that's what we would do. So I would say probably in the neighborhood of 40 to 60 employees to start with. And that would be part-time and full-time staff.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm trying to figure out why we, as commissioners representing Forsyth County, would delay anything in your particular field for 6 long months. I don't know what the big deal would be with us. I haven't discussed it with anybody, and this is the first I've heard of it. But it's interesting to find out more about what you fellas are doing and what the outlook is for you, and you're very optimistic, whether you do it or not. But I just want to make that comment because someone needs to sit down and say, David, you don't know anything, do you? No, I don't. If it means delaying everything that has to do with public health for 6 months, and I don't know why. There's got to be a reason. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions for either Mr. Hoots or Ms. Martin? Oh, go ahead. Excuse me.
Quite frankly, this is the first I have heard that the only limiting factor is the availability of employees. And that it sounds like we're being told, on the one hand, that it is a zero-sum game, that the only place to get qualified staff is to hire them away from someone who's already doing the same thing. I do not know enough about the operations on the ground to evaluate the accuracy of that analysis. I do know from personal family experience during the last few years that there are long delays in arranging non-emergency medical transport for patients home from the hospital. So it seemed to me initially to be a no-brainer. We have another qualified applicant to provide additional vehicles out there providing the service. Why would we wait? So again, this is the first time hearing that will, by Mr. Hoot's analysis, will not provide additional services, but simply shuffle bodies around. It sounds like we have two different analyses being presented. Do we have a third-party view from our own staff?
I would report a third-party view would be our other provider who is reported staffing has improved, and they feel that they've increased staffing over the summer. And so they feel as their staffing is ready to go and they're able to provide the service needed.
And I mean, you know, I would add, just because Damon and I have been so close to the staffing crisis that we have with our own EMS, that it has definitely improved, but it has been, we have had very unique emergency measures to make that happen. Things like, you know, going out and hiring 15 or 20 untrained medics, putting them on the payroll day one, and then hiring them, you know, once they get certified. You know, so we've been doing these extraordinary measures around that, and I think we are probably the largest employer of EMTs. I don't know, at least in the county, for the county service, you know, we're employing them. So it definitely has improved. Are we out of the woods yet? No, and so, you know, my thoughts around a delay would be, you know, I think in 3 months we'll be in a little different place. In 6 months, I would absolutely hope we'll be in a different place. I will say that the field is enticing enough to young people that we've had really good success enticing people into this field who probably, and Brian can probably speak to this because he's training all these young people, they come from a wide variety of backgrounds that we never really had before. A lot of the folks that came into this service, you know, because they knew somebody who did it, or, you know, family members, or had, you know, medical kind of interest. But you are getting a much broader applicant with a different set of backgrounds, and frankly more diversity than we've ever seen in the service before. So,
and Mr. Chairman, if I may, I believe the commission has two issues before it in considering this ordinance. One, is this franchise necessary to provide needed services? That's the first issue. And the second would be if MedX is qualified to provide those services.
I think I felt like from the presentation we had last week, as well as where we are, I think the answer to your second question is yes, they're qualified to provide the services. I think the other issue is exactly the one that, do we need it? Do we need to do that to meet our obligation to the community to provide safe transport and timely transport? And I'm kind of have to rely on the people that are in this business with you all. And I assume that you had some of this discussion before we had this proposal submitted to begin with, the new franchise. There was, and other than if we always do that and whatever, I'm a little confused, a little bit like Commissioner Bessie, I guess. But I don't know that we need it or not. You all the ones that kind of make that suggestion. I know that I hear about the unit hour utilization issue a lot, and that's still not good for us. But I share Commissioner Bessie issue. Is it a zero-sum game? I mean, are we going to, in order for, you know, it's get correctly to open up, are they going to be hiring our people and Mr. Hoot's people and others? And so we end up with the winner is the new guy that's maybe paying more money. I'm just trying to figure this. I'm trying to figure this out, and I think our attorney made that's our issue before us is, do we need it? Do we need the service? And when do we need it? Or exactly is the question. But to answer that is not an easy one.
yeah,
I'm trying to decide what's going to be different in 6 months. We'd have more people, but if they're able to hire the people away, will that not happen 6 months from now? It's just like it could happen now? I'm trying to get at this here.
yeah. So,
And does that end up, we have to pay more in the marketplace in order to compete with a new vendor that we have added? I mean, it gets all these questions get in there, and I guess what hasn't been said is what actually, I mean, kind of what are the pay schedule? I mean, what are the rate differences? I mean, is it a huge difference between what we pay, and I assume we're probably competitive with what Mr. Hoos pays? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. What data we need? What data do we need to make that decision?
So from the manager's, from my perspective, we definitely need the system capacity. We definitely need it.
Okay.
The real question is the question, are the employees there to immediately, if we say yes, where are the employees going to come from? They're either going to leave another service, or they're going to have to move here, because I don't believe, and I think Brian would probably agree with me, and Mike would agree with me, that I don't think there are EMTs out there that can't find a job. And so I do think that we have a labor issue there. What is very unique about this service is that they can actually hire folks who are 18, and so you can get fairly young folks into it, and you can get them trained up pretty doggone quickly. In Forsyth Tech's great, all the tech schools got great programs, and they have responded to the demand, and they are in the process of doing that. And so my recommendation, I don't know if it's 3 or 6 months, my recommendation would be to approve it, but to give it a little bit of a delay, and let's get our academy through, let's get those folks through. We'll know how many of those make it through. It says to me that we're probably going to be doing another academy, because I know we got 41 vacancies right now in our service. I know exactly what that number is. I know exactly how many left, and I know exactly how many we've got applications right now. We do have 15 applications, if I looked at it 2 days ago. How many of those are going to be, are going to make it through our screening process, I don't know, but.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Please.
Mr. Manager, were we, the county, were we seeking additional service, or did we just get a proposal?
We always open up a period where interested parties in the franchise can apply. And Brian, talk a little bit about that process. We do it a certain time of year, and we just have always done that. And what that has created some order to the chaos, because we used to just get them hit and miss, and then I'd bring them to you when we got them, and that was difficult. And so now it is an annual thing we do now. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Every January and February, we accept applications for franchise services for ambulance services in the county. That's been longstanding since I've been a member of Forsyth County EMS since 2004. This is typically vetted by the compliance officer, which I serve as the agency compliance officer, who looks to see if they can meet, if the service that is recommended can meet all the state statutes set forth by North Carolina Office of VMS. They can meet communication statutes. Once I do the initial approval, I forward it to the Director of Emergency Services. They approve, and then it goes forward to the County Manager's office, and then also the Finance Director's office. We look at financials to make sure that they can operate with at least for 3 months as an ambulance service here in Forsyth County, and that they have the ability to tie in not only to our communication system, but also our data system as well. I'd like just to speak just a little bit about the impact that the third service would provide. Firstly, in regards to our 911 system, we do know when we lost New Care years ago, we saw a 11% increase in our UHU, or unit hour utilization. It was just dramatically felt. And the addition of a second provider has shown so positive. With Providence coming on board last year, we were able to drop our UHU to where now we're getting to a more healthy place where we can operate safely and more efficiently. We look to see a third provider come on board and allow that UHU to drop even more, allowing Forsyth County EMS to focus on the high acuity calls and the private providers to focus on the more lower acuity calls. Also, the impact I see on the system is that over the past few months, I've had a secondary triage pilot program going on with the 911 center and the community paramedics of MIH. We have seen that we have offered callers with low acuity calls who are having to wait because there's such an ambulance shortage. Well, we try to offer diversions to go to urgent cares, mental health, and about 47% are just not interested in a diversion, right? So we need these ambulances available to transport these patients. And then our community partners at the hospitals are still with a work group that Chief Hundley and I put forward. We've worked hard to better communication between our private providers and the hospitals. We're still hearing that, hey, things are getting better, but we still have a hard time getting people discharged via ambulance. So a third service to me would be a huge impact, a positive impact for the county.
My additional thought is, if we the county opened it up, as you talked about we do each year, and you go through these discussions with potential providers, and as we're doing that, if the thought has occurred that we may need the services now, but from conversation that's going on, it's known that workers in that field is in short supply. It just seems to me that even though we opened it up, that there may have, I'm trying to be careful with my words to keep from causing any kind of blame, but of anything, but looked like maybe some of those things would have been thought of, and as they were having discussions with the potential providers, that they could have said, well, you can put the proposal in, but it may be an extended period of time before we're going to want the service to come forward. So that's...
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
That's just my thought.
A couple of questions. One, for the county attorney, is there any legal impediment to our receiving additional information from staff outside the meeting process and before the scheduled hearing on June 1?
There's not. However, the public hearing would take place next week, June 1st, and that's when members of the public would also be able to weigh in. But there's nothing that would prohibit you from speaking with staff before then.
I mean, just to be blunt, I need to get in a situation where I'm almost cross-examining witnesses to dig down to the bottom of the question of to what degree are we really talking about a zero-sum game, and to what degree are we talking about an additional provider at worst bidding up the market cost of driver time. And
I would just add that we need to make sure that we're treating parties equally.
Absolutely. But I would like the opportunity to speak with our staff regarding their informed opinion about whether there's any benefit to a delayed license issuance, or whether it would be helpful on net to service provision for the people of the county to go ahead now. And that'll be key to whether I would encourage just issuing a license or franchise, additional franchise with immediate effect, or whether I would be inclined to support a delay of any length, personally. Thank you.
I have one other question for Mr. Martin, I mean, maybe two, but, and it really gets at the issue of how many cities are you all in now in the western part of the state?
We're in 9 counties now, and we have approximately 400 employees and around probably 90 ambulances.
So when you have opened in the past in a new county, you're arriving in a new county, did you hire all of your staff from within the county? Is there some attraction from other places that
Yes,
perhaps,
sir.
and I'm assuming from the conversation so far that MedEx typically pays a higher wage. I'm making an assumption from that. And if that is correct, if you've hired people from adjacent counties too, I mean, this gets at the zero-sum game. If you bring in other people that apply from, or they're coming, I'm just trying to get at the
Yes, sir, that
I'm
is
trying to get at
correct.
the pool of applicants.
Well, we do hire from surrounding counties. We have employees driving 2 hours to work because they want to work for the company. So there's a lot of EMTs in the surrounding counties that would come to work for us, probably come to work for either of the other providers. But a lot of folks now at the EMT level, they're chasing money. So they do follow a little bit more towards higher pay. And no offense to any other provider. It's just that that's what we have experienced with MedX. We have seen where one service will increase their pay by $1, and some of those employees would go there temporarily and then see that the things were not as good there as they wanted them to be, and they would come right back to us. So we would increase that just to try to be on the same level. We want to be competitive. We don't want to come in and we don't want to jack it up to where it caused anybody any issues. That's not our intention at all. Our main goal is just to provide a service for this county and the citizens of the county. But yes, sir, there are firemen within the fire departments that would come to work for us on a part-time level. They work the fire department full-time. There are other EMS employees in the surrounding counties that would come to work for us on a part-time level. So there are quite a few EMTs out there. I know that this county is, just like everybody else. Everybody's taxed on EMTs, but there are still some available, and it all depends on what they're attracted to come to work, who they want to come to work for. So, all I can say is that our main goal is only one thing: to provide the service for the county. We spoke with EMS. We did exactly what we were asked to do: provide the information and apply. And we are ready to provide the service for this county and the citizens within the county. We have everything in place and a strategic plan. So that's our main number one goal.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, my take on all of this conversation is that it's been positive. It's something we should have had a long time ago. And I think it's one of those important decisions that we just don't snap and make a quick decision just to solve a problem that we have when we don't really know what the problem is in terms of the problems, the needs, the interests of the provider and those that they service. And I think 6 months is a long time to put off this type of service. I would suggest we take anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to let the county examine the whys, wherefores, et cetera, of this discussion and see if we can reach at least some kind of intelligent decision that we would feel comfortable with. I wouldn't feel comfortable right now if we voted one way or the other, because I don't know what I'm voting for. But I do think we need to talk about it. And I appreciate you all coming in here and talking the way you did, because most of this stuff I had never heard from the lips of man before, and you fellows have done a great job. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Plotter. Let me ask our county attorney one follow-up question as a result of that. As Commissioner Plotter was speaking, I just went to the end of the ordinance of the action, and it looks like it says at the very last, it is be it further ordained that the franchise shall become effective upon final adoption after 2 readings. So if we were to have the hearing next meeting on June 1st, then there would be, I guess, does a date certain need to be established at that time based on this, or is there a way to adjust that at a point after the hearing to make a decision on the effective date, should that be the case?
Because it's a franchise, it has to be approved, it has to be voted upon twice by the board. And so the schedule has been noticed and publicized as the public hearing being June 1st, next Thursday. And then if it proceeds, the board would vote upon it. You'd have to come back again at the next meeting 2 weeks later, June 15th, to vote again. If it passes then it would take effect. But whatever franchise you approve would need to say when it starts. So that date really needs to be decided by next week or by whenever you hold the public hearing.
So and I assume this hearing's already advertised, we're ready to go, and that we just need to decide by next week the answer to that question.
That's correct.
Got it. Finally, any other questions? All righty. Thank you both for coming up and talking. Appreciate the report. Got it. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. All right. Very good. You got a special resolution, item 2. It's a resolution recognizing June 15th as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day in Forsyth County, North Carolina. Rick Hall, who's our who's the director of the aging division of DSS, will be in to talk through that one. Item 3, we talked about at length last week, and it was added into the agenda. There are 3 options for the resolution authorizing amendments to the loan to PCCI Land Incorporated. Gordon will review the options.
Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, as you requested last week, what you have before you are 3 different options for the PCCI property and how to proceed. Of course, you all remember that they've requested that the loan, the $600,000 loan, be forgiven. As of May 1st, it's accruing interest at the rate of $4,000 a month, which is 8% annual interest. So what you have before you are 3 different options, and I spoke with, I emailed with Kelly Mitter, and I believe he's here today. And unfortunately, I got some responses from him, and then I prepared these, and then later on, after the items had already been submitted, there were some follow-up discussions, I believe, from the developer. So what I've got before you, I'll walk through what I have before you, and then I'll walk through additional information I received from them. So the first option I just gave it a title of full interest repayment. That would allow the number of units to be reduced from 72 originally approved to 62. There would still be a quarter of those, or 16 units, would be at or below 30% of area median income, and the remainder would be, the 46 units would be at or below 60% of AMI, and that's true for all 3 of these proposals, so I won't keep repeating that. So the first option would have repayment in full plus interest, which is already accruing. So that's the first option. The second option would be to allow an extension of the due date. Now, the due date was April 30th, but if you approve the second option, you would change that date to some date in the future. After my initial emails with Mr. Mitter, I had put that date in here as October 31st. So if the $600,000 is repaid in full by October 31st, that's it. There's no interest. Okay, so that's option 2. Subsequently, I received a little clarification from them. So the way this was set up is this is basically a bridge loan, which is a loan you get until your financing comes in. And so the thought of this board was, when PCCI received its financing, it would repay the county. The financing is supposed to be available to spend in September or maybe October. That's why I put the date as October 31st. There was some concern from PCCI that they may not be able to repay it, and so there was a request that that date be December 31st. But right now, it's in here as October 31st. Okay, that's option 2. Option 3 is the forgivable loan, and that was the primary request from PCCI, which would have the interest and the principal both forgiven. Now, just to make sure that the housing is constructed, I put in a date by which the housing would have to be constructed, because you don't want to be revisiting this issue 5 years from now. And so at my initial discussions, I understood that it was going to be completed by spring of 2024, and so I put a date in here that basically the certificate of occupancy and the first tenant moving in would have to be done by December 31st, 2024. So I thought that would give them plenty of time. Subsequently, there was an email which stated that it would be spring of 2025. And so the date I have in here right now is December 31st, 2024. I understand from PCCI that they think that if you did choose to forgive the loan, they would want a later date. So that's the update I have. I'm happy to, I know there's a lot going on here because there are 3 options, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about any of them.
Any questions for Gordon?
Chairman, I do have a few questions. So that I can remember, Dudley, you might have to help me remember this. The loan was paid out of what? PAYGO?
It's a good question. Kyle, do
I think
you
it was just
remember?
general funds.
General funds?
I don't believe it was PAYGO. I think it was just out of the general fund. It may have been,
Is it an economic development reserve? That is sort of,
yeah, I'd have to double check, but this was a few years ago, and so I remember there was one year where we did not actually appropriate PAYGO, and I think it might have been out of there.
Yeah.
It might have been out of that.
yeah. I think in any event, it would have been, it was definitely from reversions or what would have been PAYGO, even if it didn't fit into that time frame. So it was not part of the anticipated revenue coming straight from the tax, from current year taxes. It would have been PAYGO funds.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. And then in that question, relative to option 2, October 23 is the date, or is it December that they're asking for the extension?
So the date I put in, based on when the financing closes, I put in October 31st, 2023. The
Okay.
date they've requested, I believe, is December 31st, 2023.
If we were to extend it to December 2023, in your opinion, what would happen? What is your best recommendations?
I don't really have a recommendation for any of these. What would happen is that would be the deadline for them to pay back the $600,000. So the only difference would be 2 months later.
And the interest would accrue beginning on that day, I guess.
The interest would start accruing 2 months later if they did not pay it back.
Right, from October, if we just chose December.
Right. So, for example, if they repaid the loan in January, if you had the October date, you would get 3 months of interest. If you had the December date, you get 1 month of interest. Right.
Sure. So are they interested in repayment if we took the interest off the table?
I believe they're here today, and they could answer that better than I could.
Yeah. Is that something that you guys can answer today? For me?
Yes, please come in.
I'm going somewhere with this, I know.
Thank you again, and I'm Linwood Davis, and
Yes, Mr.
again, we
Davis.
appreciate all of y'all's time and consideration on this, and appreciate Gordon. Thank you. That was actually, he's done a really good job. It's a complicated transaction, and he's really gotten his arms around it
Yeah.
really well. So, thank you for that. And so the question is, our request has been if we can have relief from this loan. And so that's what we're asking for y'all today. You've asked some particular questions, which we appreciate, on what happens. And I believe with the option 2 that he has is it basically is the same deals we've had before, just it has moved the repayment back about 6 to 8 months or something like that. Our preference, just because this project has gotten so tight, is to get relief, and that's what we've asked on this. If I may take one other second, just to give you a general overview of how does the rest of the year look like for this project and what happens and why these dates are there. Our anticipation is that we will, we're not asking for any more money from the county. We're asking for relief of a loan that they've already given us that we've actually used to take down the property and get rid of the budget in. We anticipate to actually close on getting the equity. As you recall, this is a tax credit property, so we have the credits, we sell those, and at the same time, we get a construction loan. We anticipate to do that around Labor Day. And, but just with the markets having been so skittish, and as it came up earlier today, you look at what they're doing in Washington DC, the markets are going nuts because they're looking at a budget deal. We've asked to push that back to December, but we will anticipate spending, closing on this deal in September. And with this particular program, just one thing to keep in note, that'll just to make sure that we keep things moving along. It's very important that you say, yeah, we have to get this housing built. That's requirements of the tax credits. And in fact, we have to spend 10% on to utilize these tax credits. We have to spend at least 10% on this project by December is what we have to do, or we actually lose the tax credit. And you're looking at the guy that's guaranteeing these tax credits. And so I can assure you that's actually going to get done. And so that's how it's, that's just part of the rules that we have to live under.
I understand. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, please. More questions.
What are your rent rates like for the 16 units and for the 46 units?
We've given you a rent schedule. In general, I can give it to you exactly, I've got it right here, but they range from, there is a range, and that range is based upon, as you recall, this is for people that earn between 30 and 60% of the area median income, range from about $280 for a one-bedroom unit up to about $860. But we can give you, you actually have the rent schedule, and I'm glad to give it to you again. But it ranges between 200 and I think 80 and up to about 860 for a two-bedroom unit. Comparable units, just at the top of the hill where the baseball stadium is about $15,000 to $2,000 a month. And again, the reason that we are able to offer those is because we've received $12 million in federal tax credits, so we have a lot of equity going into the project. We're building this project with cash that we've gotten from the federal government.
Any other questions?
I would say that it was from PAYGO that was transferred back to the general fund, but it was from the 2018 PAYGO from a budget reserve.
Chair Martin, I just want to get a clarification from Commissioner McDaniel that you're trying to initiate now the to forgive the interest versus the loan. Is that what you're saying right now, that you would kind of be supportive, or you want to hear their feedback around if the interest was forgiven versus the loan?
Yeah, there's a lot that's going on in my mind right now. I haven't made a decision on any of them, honestly, but I did need to hear clarity in terms of option 2. What were you thinking there?
And I appreciate you bringing that up, because I know that we all have to figure out where the nice compromise is as a board, and I definitely think that that could, help move me in the direction of 2 with, at least the forgiveness of the interest versus the whole loan. But like you, we have to make up our mind. Of course, everybody knows I'm a proponent of 3, but in order to help as much as, I possibly can, we will have to, work well with one another. But I do think it is fair to say, and Dudley, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that maybe there are opportunities for the group to come back and apply for something else to kind of alleviate the loan piece, if you will.
Well, Commissioner Woodbury, what I would like to say is thank you, and I am listening, so I know where your heart is, and I know where most of our hearts is with affordable housing, so we will do the right thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Davis? All righty. Thank you very much.
I do want to say thank you all. Everybody has been very easy to work with, and we really appreciate everybody. Thank you all.
We appreciate your work too. Thank you.
Good. All right. Agenda item 4 are minutes, and they will be going out pretty soon.
They have gone out.
Gone out. Very good. So you've got those. Take a look at those. You've got a couple of budget and finance items. Item 5 is a resolution designating the Piedmont Triad Regional Council as the lead agency on aging for Forsyth County for fiscal years 24 and 25. Kyle's going to talk real quickly about that.
Thank you, Commissioners. So this is an item that we have to do pretty much every year, and it is to designate PTRC as the lead area agency on aging. They've they've had this designation for several years, since I've been here anyways. And I think really across the state, most councils of government serve as the lead area agency on aging for counties. And so in this role, they plan and coordinate development of our funding plan, directly work with the Home and Community Care Block Grant Planning Committee. And so really, this is just something that we have to do on an annual basis.
Any questions for Kyle?
Thank you, Kyle.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Agenda item 6 is a resolution authorizing execution of an engagement letter and audit contract with Cherry Beckert LLP to complete the annual independent audit for Forsyth County for fiscal year 2022-23, subject to approval by the Secretary of the Local Government Commission. Terry can review it, but beyond that, I will say that the audit committee met, discussed this. As I mentioned in my advance email this morning, they heard both Terry and I talk about the delay that occurred this year in the audit, which was of concern, and we do bear some responsibility for that. And so the audit fee going into next year's is about $20,000 higher. Rather than try to negotiate that as a change order in last year's audit, we said let's go do that moving forward, and then next year it would normalize back to the contract amount. Part of that was, at least for me, and I'll let Terry speak for herself, was we are not out of the woods yet with our system, and so the ERP has been sort of the primary challenge, I guess, in trying to get that system where it needed to be to complete the audit, and then just the dual work that staff was having to do to prepare for the auditors and assist them, and make sure that our accounting system was operating adequately. You want to add anything to that, Terry?
No, I think that's accurate. We are working with all available resources to prepare for the fiscal 23 audit. We do have a lot of work still to do, and this contract really will cover that audit, so the upcoming audit.
So it's a catch-up. We've got catch-up work to do now that the accounting side of our system is in place. So.
You did say Cherry Beckert, right?
Cherry Beckert.
Only question I have is that I know the 3-year contract had automatic, up to increases, and my memory is 3%, but it may have been, I think I was right, 3%, right, Terry?
That sounds right, and this contract includes that percent and the additional amount that we negotiated.
I just want to make sure that 3% increase was on the base bid, and then that the $20,000 was added afterwards, and not another 3% added to the $20,000 extra charge.
No.
And similarly, when we go to the 3rd year, I want to make sure that's based on base bid with 2 years increase, and that this really is a separate item for the extra work this year.
It is a separate item. They have in there the actual quoted increase from last year's negotiation.
Good. Any other questions about the audit payment?
All right. Thank you. All right. One grant item. It's a resolution authorizing execution of a grant agreement between Forsyth County and North Carolina Department of Transportation Division of Aviation. Mark Davidson will review.
Good news. Of the 72 public use airports in the state of North Carolina, Smith Reynolds Airport, along with 10 others, was selected and awarded a grant under the Aviation Career Education Academy Grants Program. The NCDOT Division of Aviation, the FAA, offer this grant program to inspire young people to explore and pursue the many rewarding careers available in the state's aerospace sector. The grant funds must be used to cover direct cost of the ACE academies, such as supplies and vendor costs. In the past, has been used for things like model rockets and aircraft rides and safety materials. And for the past 12 years, Smith Reynolds Airport has partnered with the Jim Shaw ACE Academy, and they decided to obtain this $3,000 grant to support the camp. Scheduled camps for this year are June 26th through the 30th. They have 1 week for middle school, and then July 10th through the 14th for high school. Both camps will be hosted at the new Maisie S. Woodruff Aviation Technology Lab, and we recommend that the grant, the staff will work to make sure that we comply with the grant accounting of the funds.
Any questions for Mark?
Good work.
It's great.
Very good. All right, item 8 is also marked, so he's going to stand right there. He's going to talk about a resolution authorizing a third amendment to the agreement with Adcon Incorporated. Let's turn it over to you.
Okay. This project dates back some time, back 2017. The North Carolina Department of Transportation awarded us a grant, 100% grant with the State Transportation Improvement Program for a taxi lane Lima and ramp. This is that ramp that's north of North State up there, Lansing Drive. Recently, a draft environmental assessment, the EA, was submitted to the state and for review and comment, and a number of additional services have been requested by the new planning and environmental manager with the NCDOT Division of Aviation, which are beyond the original scope and services. And so to comply with the request of that, to finalize the EA, a third amendment has been developed with a not to exceed a cost of $65,870. The NCDOT, since it's 100% funded, reviewed the task order amendment and has agreed to pay 100%.
It's good news. Other questions for Mark?
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Agenda item 9 is a resolution authorizing execution of a 3-year agreement with EMS Management Consultants Incorporated to provide medical billing and collection services for the Forsyth County Department of Emergency Medical Services. Rich Berman's going to review.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Earlier this year, we competitively bid the contract for the billing and collection from EMS Transports. 6 offerers submitted their proposal. We evaluated them and arrived at the best, lowest priced proposal to EMS Management and Consultants. Their prices actually, they are our current contractor, and the prices that they submitted in this contract, their management fees are actually lower than the current fees that they are charging us. As an example, one of their primary fee for net collections is currently 4.9% on everything that they collect. It drops to 4.75%. At this point in the fiscal year, they have already collected almost $11 million in revenues, and next year they are forecasting upwards of $11.5 million coming back into the county. And with that, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
I've got a couple.
Yes, sir.
And what is the breakdown on the collection agency debt piece? And that is it's a deduct or an add-on to the 4.75, that part, it's kind of that second column, the part that's 2.38% of net collections received from accounts. Am I missing?
Give me 1 second to flip to that.
There was when they send X amount of money over to collection agencies, there's a different rate. It's a 2.38% from accounts placed with a collection agency or within a debt set-off program.
Yes, sir.
And so that means they do not receive. Like, what does that mean?
When they submit an account to a collections agency, that collection agency goes out, they work it, and in this case, currently, the collection agency charges 24% to EMSMC, and then on top of that, they charge another
2.38 is what this proposal is. Yes.
The current charge is actually 2.47%. That's the current charge.
Right.
The 2.38 is the new fee.
So, I think I'm going to get to your question, and Rich, you correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm saying this wrong, but so what happens, that means, because we send those debts set off, that is the last thing that we do, and so, it has gone through a bunch of stuff that in efforts by EMS billing, by the service, they've already gone through that, and so when it's handed off to them, that's when that fee is imposed.
Yes.
Well, yeah, because I assume they're paying the collection agency.
Yes, sir. That's
yes,
correct.
I mean, I got it. Obviously, they want to avoid that.
Yeah.
Well, the other question I've got is that, there's a couple proposals on here cheaper than them, and I assumed right off that EMS was our current provider, and I still can't help but think in a rating system that the current provider that you're used to doing business with, we're used to doing business with, ends up being convenient to not make a change because Thorne Ambulance is 4.45% and 2.25%, which is yet another. And I didn't realize, man, maybe my fault, but there's $11 million collected. The difference of 0.5% is, now we're talking about a little more serious money. So I'm just real curious why they're not, and I didn't know the difference piece, but you know, there's a group above called Collinton, they're 4.09%. They're 4.09%. Now their collection agency debt set off is more, and whatever that percentage of set off is 3.29. But I mean, the numbers are, I mean, they met your threshold to qualify for, they were recognized as qualified bidders. That's exactly what you said. They said that the 6 were deemed responsive, and I assume by responsive it means they met your, whatever your checkoffs were. And I'm having a little hard time awarding the contract to somebody just because we've been doing business with them. I mean, particularly when there's some money on the table, maybe serious money on the table.
Absolutely, sir. I certainly respect that point. Our internal staff, Chief Gallimore, who was just here, Chief Boyd, and I reviewed all 6 of the proposals. Now, the proposals are deemed responsive because they meet all of the requirements that city-county procurement sets for the submission of a proposal. So it meets all of the paperwork that they require in the request for proposals. So that deems them as being responsive. We evaluated all of the proposals and found that EMSMC, yes, sir, true, they are our current contractor, theirs was the best, and I'm going to use my words carefully, they were the best proposal with the lowest price. So these other these other offerers that we believed, in our professional opinion, that they did not come up to the capabilities that EMSMC has to offer.
As a part of your checkoff and submission, do you not list for previous customers and references? Is that not a part of what their package would be? We do the collections for this county, this county, this county, or XYZ, and then from that standpoint, if the answer to that is yes, which I hope it is, then I would expect that you call them up and say, are you having good service with Thorne Ambulance? Are you having good services with Collinton? Is there any kind of issue on that? I'm having a hard time understanding how words on a proposal are going to distinguish the capabilities a certain amount, particularly when if you needed those capabilities, you would ask that question to start with in terms of your bidders applying. So if this were the first time this had ever happened, I'd probably say, well, okay, but this happens repeatedly. And it's kind of like, why bother to bid if they're not going to, quite frankly, it doesn't look like they're being considered. I'm just going to tell you how I look at this. That's the way I look at it. And you're going to have to convince me somehow or another why this is better than at least 2 bidders that appear to be responsive, check the boxes, and are significantly less.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, Commissioner, that we evaluated the proposals, and if you looked at the proposals themselves, they were weak. They were poorly prepared.
Wait a minute. Are we talking about the paperwork is in pencil instead of type? I mean, what are we talking about here? Messy or what?
No,
what are we talking about?
It was the completeness of the proposal. And as we evaluated them, we felt that it wasn't necessary to go to that other step to look at their references. We took what they had based on the face value.
Yeah. Rich, let's do this. We got some time, but early next week, let's go ahead and get just get those proposals to the board, and they can see them. And I think,
yeah, I can read.
Yeah. I think we'll let's get the proposals and that direct information to them, and
Most certainly.
Yeah. So we'll get you to see them, and I think you'll.
I don't want to see all of them. I want to see those 2, Collinton, Thorne, and the recommended vendor, EMS, the whatever they are, EMS Associates, EMS Management.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We'll provide all 6 to you.
Just those.
I don't want to see all 6.
Just
I want to
3.
see those 3.
Yeah.
That was. Please say that again, sir.
Collinton, Thorne Ambulance, and the successful bidder EMS Management Consultant.
Yes, sir. Be more than happy to do that for you.
Good. Thank you.
Couple questions, if I may. One, you don't list the location of any of the firms. I gather that you can't require that there be a premium placed on local firm applicants. But with many services, there is a structural advantage to having someone based in the same state, for example. When you are dealing with debt collection practices, it's not uncommon for collection agencies to be in various states around the country. And in some cases, it may be that they are following where the rules on collection practices are weakest. Do you have the information regarding where these firms are located?
Yes, sir, they were all submitted in the proposals. And if I may comment on your statement, actually in furtherance of your statement, there are some unique requirements for North Carolina Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid, that having a resident company who is familiar with that is definitely a benefit. There are advantages to having the current vendor continue over into the new service.
May I ask, as a part of your evaluation process, do you look at records of companies with, say, consumer protection agencies, State Attorney General's office, in terms of error rate?
No, sir, we did not look at anything beyond what was submitted in their proposal.
So you don't ask for that information?
No, sir.
Is there any reason that you shouldn't ask for that information?
I really can't answer that question, sir.
Thank you.
Could I say to Commissioner Bessie, EMS is definitely here in Forsyth County. Their home office is in Clemens. As a matter of fact, two of our employees formed EMS years ago. Not only are they successful in Forsyth County, they're successful across North Carolina. They have an excellent, excellent reputation.
And they ought to be cheaper. Real good. Never mind. I'll be looking forward to seeing the proposals.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you. All right. Very good. Agenda item 10 is a resolution authorizing the purchase of vaccines from Sanofi. I hope I said that right. Pasteur Incorporated, using state of North Carolina contract pricing. Camelia Pleasance is going to review that. Ms. Pleasance, come on up.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This resolution will allow the Forsyth County Health Department to purchase seasonal influenza vaccines from Sanofi Pasteur to use at its vaccination clinics. The purchase order is the amount, not to exceed the amount of $132,226.23, and it's being purchased through the North Carolina statewide term contract, for influenza vaccine. And then the reservation for the upcoming flu vaccine season must be made by May 31st of this year for the fall and winter flu season month. Any questions that I can answer?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Pleasance. All right, and then the last contract matters, item 11. It's a resolution selecting and authorizing execution of an agreement with Frank L. Bloom Construction Company to act as design builder and to provide design and pre-construction services for the Highland Avenue Park project. Chris.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The item for your consideration today is a resolution selecting and authorizing execution of an agreement with Frank L. Bloom Construction Company to act as design builder and provide design and pre-construction services for the Highland Avenue Park. ARPA funding was approved by the Commissioners at their November 10th, 2022 meeting to improve the Health and Human Services campus and to provide some park development on land adjacent to 651 Highland Avenue. On February 10th, 2023, a request for qualifications was advertised by City County Purchasing. 48 firms received the RFQ documents. for the project. 3 RFQ responses were received by the Monday, March 10th deadline. Barr Construction Company Incorporated out of Greensboro, Frank L. Bloom Construction Company from Winston-Salem, and WC Construction Company LLC from Winston-Salem. Staff evaluated the 3 proposals, and Frank L. Bloom Construction Company received the highest ranking, was selected to provide the design and pre-construction services for the project. Design and pre-construction services are to include, but are not limited to, civil and landscape design and engineering, building design, cost estimating, value engineering, budgeting, surveying, underground utility locating, geotechnical analysis, and coordination with regulatory agencies. At the completion of the pre-construction phase, the design builder will prepare a guaranteed maximum price proposal to construct the project. Total design fees and construction are not to exceed an amount of $1.4 million. The total negotiated fees for design and pre-construction services are not to exceed $145,340, including a design fee in the amount of $126,840 and other services in the amount of $18,500. And with this, I'll be happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
I'm very much in favor of the park. I mean, I think it's a great idea. Where did we come up with the budget for the park?
Budget?
I mean, we have a sort of a ballpark budget, and particularly the things that are in it. I have real questions about the amphitheater piece of this as we get. This is not. This sort of is way more costly than I anticipated from the very beginning. I'm just kind of curious about how we got here.
Okay. John, anything to say there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our budget was really rough estimates when we were putting together the ARPA proposal based on costs that we had seen in other parks projects, and then also just some other research. And so in it was a very small amphitheater, a sporting court, a playground that would be inclusive for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, restrooms, food truck hookup, some green space. It's 1 acre, so it's not, huge, and then some picnic tables. So very much a passive park, not a lot of amenities just because it's 1 acre.
Did it also include one of those, seemed like we saw a picture or proposal of kind of like a fenced area that was kind of a soccer kind of.
Yeah, that was the sporting court. We would have some sort of sporting court. So once we get a design, we will see what options they provide. We've thrown around possibly futsal. We've talked about maybe basketball. We'll see what the designer comes up with some options for us.
And help me understand, I mean, the amphitheater, the reason I mention amphitheaters, a lot of schools put them in for a period of time. That was just a very popular thing in site development. And the evaluations kind of, you go by and you see a lot of them are pretty disrepaired, simply because they don't get used and they're not very popular a lot of times. When you begin to think of the uses of amphitheaters, which productions and whatever else, there are not lots of those, particularly when a lot of the times you use them is outside and it's hot. And it rains, and it does things outside. So they were kind of popular for a while, at least in schools, became not so popular with the lack of use. And I'm just kind of curious whether this is a thing, because this does require elevation adjustments, and I just haven't been on that site a time or two. I can see how it could fit, but it still requires, there's a good bit of, it's kind of like a lot of grading gets added to the cost for that. And is there anyone that has told us that they really, if you ask the users, what would you like to have in a park? I'm kind of curious that amphitheater is a box that gets checked. And maybe somebody can answer that question about that.
I mean, I think, once we get a design, certainly if it looks like it's cost prohibitive, doesn't make sense, we were just coming up with various things that may fit. I don't know any amphitheaters that's in that area. And so I think we were just trying to figure out ways to beautify the Health and Human Services campus for the community to use. So we are, in the process of trying to renovate the auditorium, which would provide some indoor space for employees as well as the community, obviously some outdoor amphitheater space that would be probably free for individuals to use. Certainly, there's Bailey Park, but there is a cost associated with that. This is nowhere near the size of that. But again, as we get the design, if that's something that the board decides they do not want to do, that would also be very easy to remove. This is just all very preliminary budget estimates. I don't think we are, locked into anything at this point.
It just strikes me as an expensive, this is an acre park. I mean, we're not talking like a big park.
Well, I will say, these are ARPA dollars. We have a deadline to spend them. And so, if we don't, then certainly it could potentially run back into revenue loss for the county.
Well, I think we have figured out a strategy that the revenue loss can be avoided. I just don't think we need to build a park that's more than we need or whatever. I mean, we're not, just because money's available, but I mean, we're going to, well, let's get a $2 million park. I mean, I'm here. I mean, I think it's all about the concept. I'm good, but the money is just not washing with sort of my perception of the world, and I realize mine is a little different than a lot of other people's, so my perception of the world. So I understand that, but that's why I'm asking about that kind of issue. That's pretty expensive on Bloom's design fee starting out here, but just by the way, I know you don't make these decisions on money. We don't make them on money, by qualifications, and Bloom is great and done great work for us, but that's a expensive bill just for the design fee. Anyway, I won't say any more. I'll be quiet. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. So I'd like to weigh in if I could as well. So knowing that a couple months ago, this ARPA was coming down to our county, and I had a dream. And I thank this board for participating in that dream, and we came to the consensus that we would do something that was transformational for Highland Avenue, which is in District A, right? For those black and brown folks in the community, they needed to have something that that would be, again, transformational, hopeful. So we agreed that this project is not just a park, would create that space for those individuals in our communities. So again, to talk about the cost of $2 million doesn't equate nearly to the cost that it's cost us with the Callidium, which again is in my district as well, but we had no problem spending to a tune of $30 million. So I think that this board, there's a consensus to see this manifest and that we move forward, and then there's additional things that need to be done as well. For example, the Monarch building needs to be looked at, and then there's some property that we want to work on as well. We're going to be a part of the corridor, not the corner anymore.
There might be more money for the other projects if there's less money on the park. It might be kind of, look, I mean,
those are your thoughts, and those are words matter. And again, this is a consensus of the board, not the chairman. So thank you so very much, sir.
I do have a question, Chair Martin. So I just wanted to, because of course, I'm new, and I just wanted to ask a question to Chantel about sharing the added value of putting a park at the Highland Avenue campus. I think that is very forward-thinking, but that's just out of my caring heart, but there may be some insight from the actual professional work on why we would, include a park at our Health and Human Service campus.
Thank you, Commissioner Woodbury. So, there's not a lot that could really be done with 1 acre. And so if for some reason the county decides that there might need to be an expansion of, say, the Monarch building or something else, it's easy to undo a park, right? And so it provides kind of some green space and some other options if there is decided to be future use. I also think our vision, and certainly Commissioner McDaniel's vision for Highland Avenue and the Health and Human Services campus, we really want it to be a one-stop shop for the community and not just a place where people come to receive emergency assistance for food stamps and Medicaid, that we also are having things that really help them to get well and have economic mobility and those types of things. And so I think for us, a park is something a little bit different, and we're trying to do things a little bit different and better for the community to improve the lives of those that we serve.
And Commissioner Woodbury, I'd like to add as well, this space would also add arts and innovation as well. So we have creativity, and I know that some don't experience some of the creativity that comes out of our community. For example, like our children getting together and doing recitals. There's musicals, Gospel Fest on Sundays we participate in. So again, some of us don't experience those things out of our communities, but that's some of the things that I plan on seeing us transpire in that space. Thank you.
In the library, they're excited about doing some reading programs out there. I think all of you are aware that Arts Council is part of it's called I'm trying to find it, the name. It's basically an arts, One Nation, One Project. And so they really are trying to blend the arts with health. The health department is part of that, as well as behavioral health services, along with United Health Center, the city. And so we are one of 9 sites across the country that's trying to implement this One Nation, One Project model. So I do think this fits within that as well, as we're bringing arts and healing into the community.
I would lastly just suggest that we explore the resources that NACO has around the Commission on Arts and Culture. This may be something that, we could definitely leverage by way of a national trend to kind of reimagine how we provide services to our community through health and human resources. So,
love it. We'll do that.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chris. All right, we've got 2 tax administration items. You've got resolution approving refunds. You see the amounts there. One's out of the North Carolina property tax system and then the vehicle tax system. There's a contribution-based benefit cap report that we're required to disclose and present to you, so we use that as a way to do that. And then finally, we added the proclamation recognizing the 40th anniversary of WSNC 90.5 radio station.
Hey, good. That's a big deal.
All right, and so that has been added as well, and so we'll make that proclamation. So that is it for the June 1st agenda, unless I missed anything. Let me look to my team. All right, that's it, Mr. Chairman. So the only other item I have is just the presentation of the budget. My suspicion is we want a 5-minute break, but I promise I'll be quick. It'll be a fairly quick presentation to you when we get back. So, and then closed session.
We'll go for 10 minutes. We can't. Oh, sorry. Somebody saying that?
You want to let them out? Somebody's talking on that.
Okay, we're good. Let's take a 10-minute break.
Okay. trying to decide, we'll do this down there. So this is really just the ceremonial presentation of my fiscal year 23-24 budget. So I'm just going to make a few comments about it. I'm not going to dive deep into it because we are going to be in a session next Thursday at 9 o'clock, and we are going to go really deep into it. But really just for the community, I want to sort of put this budget in context. Structurally, it looks like the ones that you have seen in the past. And so you've got a continuation budget, you've got an alternate service level budget, and then you've got a capital budget as well. I'm actually going to change up. I think I am going to go up there, and I'm going to tell you why, because I've got these new glasses, and it is freaking me out to be looking down at the screen and then up at y'all. And so I'm going to go up there. I'm going to put my other glasses on.
The doctors will tell you that's age-related.
It is crazy. Oh, yeah. So, all right. So let me do this. All right. Someday I'm going to figure out how to do graduated lenses, but
This is how you do graduated lenses.
if I kept looking up and down, I think I was going to pass out.
Now, when you said the budget review is going to be Thursday, isn't it Wednesday?
It's going to be next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Yep.
So if I'm in here Wednesday, I'll be all by myself.
We'll be here, but you'll probably be by yourself. All right, so structurally, you've got this large document in front of you. It looks exactly like you've seen it in the past years. A continuation budget, which for us means that we've tried to bring to you what it costs to continue providing the level of services that we currently provide. Within the context of the new economic year. So an alternate service level part of the budget, that's where we really, as we're working through with departments in their request, we separate out what is really a service level expansion versus what it costs to kind of continue services at the current level. And then finally, the capital budget, and you will see that that part of the divider, actually, it is not in there yet, and I'll talk a little bit about kind of where we are with that and sort of what led to that. But you don't see the capital budget yet. When you get in next Thursday, we'll add that to your binder. And so big picture kind of update, what I tried to do in the manager's memo was talk a little bit about where we were a year ago, because when I submitted the budget for the year that we're currently in, there were some profound changes, and it was really interesting to think through where we were then and where we are now. And they were really around four things: labor market, supply chain, inflation, and then a risk of recession. And so as I was thinking about how to present this, I thought about Mandy Cohen's, if you think about through COVID, every time she did an update, she had whether something was green or orange or red. And so it was this, where are we with respect to that? And so with labor market, obviously last year we knew we were facing a really tough labor market. The board funded a comp and class study. We implemented that. That has helped us. And so I'm going to say that the labor market was red a year ago. It's mostly green right now. You've got a few cases like the EMS situation we just talked about that we've still got issues, and we've still got hard to fill positions, but we are seeing improvement. We are seeing an increase in number of the applications and so on and so forth. Supply chain, last year was clearly red. In my manager's message, I sort of referenced back to significant supply chain issues, ships sitting offshore for months, for literally weeks, that were jamming kind of everything up. And what we had taken for granted, I think, in prior years about the availability and competitiveness of things that we purchase as a government, it was a crazy tough time, and we really couldn't we learned we couldn't take things for granted. So that is mostly green. I think on the supply chain side of things, we still are dealing with some of them, particularly around vehicles or kinds of challenging, but we've seen improvement there. Inflation, I put a chart in there that talks about kind of where inflation is. That has come down. I think that's mostly green. The national reaction to that around the Federal Reserve setting interest rates has impacted that, and so we see improvement there. The one that's still red, maybe even more red than it was last time, I looked at risk of recession and the different groups that talk about where we are. There was kind of a uniform agreement that there is a very high probability of recession over the next year. And so I think that one is still red, maybe even more red than it was last year. Given our local economy and kind of where we are, I actually feel that, we're prepared to sort of work through that. Got a lot of construction underway, got a lot of things happening here locally that give me an idea that there's a soft landing. But in that context, when we were estimating particularly sales tax revenues, we were pretty reluctant to say that we're going to have a large sales tax collections, the same types of collections that we've had over the last year and a half into next year. And so the budget's really based on that. As I tried to put the budget into context in my message, it is very clear we are at unique times with respect to one-time revenues. And so never have I put together a county budget or spending plan with this, sort of the backdrop of $45 million of ARPA dollars that are out there in the community doing things, over the next year and a half. And we're providing governmental services over that, really in a unique way. And so, you've got that backdrop of what's happening economically in the community, and just in terms of governmental response to the things that we're dealing with. Opioid dollars, we've worked through that, and the board's made decisions that are implicit in this budget about how we're going to spend that $2 million, and there's still some dollars that are remaining there to spend. The state money. So 2 years ago, we were very successful, not only as a county, but really as a community, at getting a lot of state money into the community, whether it's capital projects at Winston-Salem State, whether it's the Stevens Center project, which is still going on downtown, or it's the $12.5 million we got for behavioral health services. And so we're starting really the process of building that crisis facility on the Human Services campus. So all of those dollars, it was the support for Blues Lake, it was the 20-some odd million dollars at Smith Reynolds Airport, and we're seeing all those things happen. And so we saw that with earmarks, but we also saw it, if you remember through the year, we kept saying, here's some one-time state COVID dollars, because the state had dollars that, that they had to spend, particularly in public health. We are, as locally administered, state supervised health and human services, we're the provider to that. And so those dollars came to us, and we've scrambled to spend those in appropriately and to respond to COVID. And so really all of that. The other kind of context piece of it that is really, if you think about it, over the last 2 or 3 years, we're talking about affordable housing and the response to that, because we have seen rapidly increasing property values. And so there, in your document, I noted there was a Redfin study that the median family home price in 2000 was $200,000 in this community, and it's almost $300,000 right now. And so it's created an affordability crisis. Our own community and economic development one-time housing programs having a hard time finding homes to put people in that are really starter homes. And so you've got that. I need to remind you that we've got a revaluation in 2025. It's not in this budget, it won't be in the next budget, but it will be in the budget the year after that. So as a community, we'll see that run up. That's going to mean some inflationary pressures on particularly for homes that go up more than the average home price that goes up through that. Even if you do a revenue neutral adjustment at that, it's going to affect folks, and so they'll see that as part of their tax bill. So just a lot of things that are changing with that. I did mention something that I feel concerned about, and you can see some of that other communities talking about it, was just the amount of investor-owned property, that large investors that were hedge fund investors came into this community, and we know over certain periods that over 40%, so 4 out of 10 of the transactions for real estate that were taking place was not, Ms. Smith buying, Mr. Jones' house. It was a hedge fund investor, or it was a large investor outside of this community that was coming in and putting that real estate in a portfolio. I don't understand exactly how $300,000 homes are good investments for real estate speculators, and so I do worry that that they are going to, as they reduce their inventory, if they all do it at the same time, it could have an impact in this community. And I think it's just something to look for and know kind of is out there. I was a little reluctant in my title, but I had a section called New Things, and so I didn't, that was the best description that I could come up with is exactly what all that was. But there are a lot of new things. We talked about a new park that's getting ready to get designed and happen. It's Blues Lake Park. You've got this new thing that's part of this budget, which is going to be the courthouse. And so part of what we had to do in budgeting and general services is make some estimations about what the holding cost of the old courthouse was going to be, and hopefully that'll sell. But moving into the new courthouse, we do have a much more efficient building that we're moving into. It's much larger, but it's also going to be more efficient. Smith Reynolds Airport had kind of a revenue loss, so it was closer. When you see this year play out, it was closer to break even because we had taken some properties out of service, and we put 2 new hangars in at Smith Reynolds. As a result, you'll see Smith Reynolds continue to prosper as an operating entity. Of course, the FAA covenants require that those dollars stay in there for the airport, but the airport's getting healthier and will be healthier in the future, and we know that. Got a new museum coming in downtown that this board was really responsible for making a reality. We've been the landlord for SciWorks and then Caladium for a long time, and so that will not change, but very soon we'll be opening that new museum. It will be less expensive to operate than the 2 facilities they have, and then the other opportunity for us to kind of keep on our horizon is that the 20-some-odd acres that old SciWorks and Caladium North is on has the potential to be redeveloped. It's in an industrial area across from the landfill and has an opportunity to be repurposed. New radio system, you're going to see where the operating cost of our radio system that are shared between us and the city of Winston-Salem comes down pretty substantially. It's really the maintenance that's coming out of that, because we're going to be putting that system in place in this coming fiscal year. It's going to save us about $400,000. And that's just us. It'll save the city an equal amount as we move forward and we'll have a radio system that is brand new versus one that is 20-some-odd years old that has been difficult to try to find parts for, and we've really had to scramble to do that. But that's part of it. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about in sort of new things was really the new enterprise resource planning system. You've heard me and I'm probably getting tired of hearing me say how difficult that project has been. We went live yesterday. We went live yesterday on the HCM component of that, and that's the one that employees will interact with in timesheets and payroll and all of those kinds of things. That has been a very, very difficult project. We do have 2 components of it that will go live in this coming fiscal year. The budget piece of that will come in the fiscal year, and then also health and safety, kind of that whole component of it, which is an important part of it, will go live. And we're going to be fine-tuning and kind of getting used to that system. Because of that, one of the things you're going to see when you dive into this budget is that we have moved some things around. So because we didn't want to do that, we sort of held off on doing that for a couple of years, but you'll see cost centers get shifted around. Some of it's just kind of things that happen, like we paid for the maintenance and the system cost for our accounting system in finance previously. Now we're actually going to be accounting for it in MIS because it's not just an accounting system, it's an accounting payroll kind of overall system. So we move that into there. We've got an animal shelter that we're operating. That the cost of that when it was the Forsyth Humane Society was in the sheriff's budget. We pulled it out of the sheriff. You'll see it kind of as a separate department in this new budget, or actually it's a division under public health. We thought about where that needed to go. Our responsibilities around animal sheltering really are a public health piece of that, and so you'll see that in those in that service area. But there's just a lot of things like that.
Before you move forward right there with the system, so I wasn't quite sure if I remembered if the maintenance, the tech services was included to kind of support you once the system has been implemented. Are they still around, and to a tune of how long?
Yeah, so you've heard us say Sierra Cedar. They are the company that helped us migrate and transition and get to that system. Chantal, you want to talk about sort of the status of that?
Sure. So we do have a contract with Sierra Cedar to provide technical support. So the finance system went live in October, and so we do have a contract with them. It's basically as needed. If hours, they do our quarterly releases. So that's set, and then we have technical hours if we need them, and we will do the same for the HR and payroll systems as well until our team is really up to speed, enough knowledge transfer for us to be able to operate it ourselves.
Yep. And you'll see that as we dive into each area, you'll kind of see where that plays out. But we are still going to be in transition with that system through next year, I think, is the upshot of all that.
Just very briefly, in terms of the sort of the macro inputs that you were looking at earlier, do you have any assumptions or guesstimates built in as to how an actual recession would affect local property values?
Not so much on the property value side, because but clearly on the revenue side, we took that into account. But if you think about it, and what we're seeing is historic growth in revenues. The last year was the first time we'd seen property tax base move $1 billion. And so in this year, it actually went up a little more than last year. And so you're seeing that, but that's actually on the 2001 value. So as it's hitting our tax rolls, it's hitting our tax rolls at the 2021 schedule of values. And so it's undervalued to some extent right when it hits our tax rolls. The biggest area where we took that into place was sales taxes. And you're seeing some communities that are out there estimating that they're going to see 6 and 7% growth in sales taxes year over year next year. We are saying that there's going to be 1.5 or 2.
Yeah, we're at 1.5% over the current year estimate, which puts us around, I think, 5 or 6%. There are a lot
from current year estimate.
Right.
Well, your estimate was lower last year than actual. I mean, your estimate was lower than actual. So is your 1.5% on top of the estimate from last year?
Of roll forward.
Actual for this year, or at least expected actual as of June 30th.
Expected actual.
Right.
So
Estimated in terms of the 2-month lag.
The current year, yes.
Best for the current year.
Yes.
Exactly. So that's where I said this exact same thing last year, and then for whatever reason, sales taxes have way exceeded expectations in this year. The last 2 or 3 months, we have started to see them whittle down. So.
It has. It's tightened up a little bit. We will, probably in the next couple of days, probably by next week, we'll have a look at one more month of actuals. We'll have through March, essentially. So.
Okay. No, more than that, by the time we vote on the budget, we'll know whether the idiots in Washington have figured out that compromise and cooperation are not curse words.
Right. Right, yeah, you get that whole discussion kind of as a backdrop, so. The fourth kind of thing to put in context was Medicaid expansion. So I'd actually mentioned Medicaid expansion. This budget assumes that it's going to happen, and it actually uses contingency, kind of a strategy around putting some extra dollars in contingency to try to understand what the local share is going to be. We've gotten some information from DSS about what their assistance in responding to Medicaid expansion. We know we're going to have to hire 30 or 40 people, and so
Has the General Assembly done anything on Medicaid expansion to define exactly what we're going to get?
they have approved it, and we learned yesterday, they are on a schedule. They need to get one eligible person on by the end of July, and it means $1 billion to the state. June 30th.
They got to have a person enrolled by June 30th.
I'll volunteer.
Okay. Well, we'll do the eligibility, so all that'll come back around. And then the last, item was, I talked a little bit about just state earmarks. We had a pretty aggressive legislative agenda with some additional state earmarks for capital projects, and we're real hopeful that will get that'll get approved. So really, kind of all of that is sort of the backdrop that we put this budget in as we present it to you. So what I'm presenting to you today is a budget that is $569,204,417. That is an increase of $36,329,633, or 6.8% over the current fiscal year. I went back and looked at what that meant from a net county perspective, because there's other money in that. And there's about $17 million net county of new dollars in that. And so that's what's derived from really three sources mostly. It's property taxes, that tax-based growth year over year. It's sales taxes, the better collections in our estimate going into next year. And then it's what we talked about at the beginning of this meeting. There's about $5 million, probably $4 million of investment earnings that we've been able to budget in this year. And so the net county piece of that is what that is. The rest of it's intergovernmental, it's ambulance fees, it's a lot of different things. Tax rate is unchanged. I'm able to recommend a tax rate with no change at 67.78, which is the current rate. Just a reminder that 11.5 cents of that is debt leveling plan. So, we're continuing to operate the county services at 56.28 cents in terms of the tax rate. Revenues did exceed when the dust settled on what the continuation budget looked like. There was $3,164,052 that was remaining, and so we put that in a reserve and did not put in a tax reduction. We essentially put that in reserve. I am recommending alternate service levels that total out $1,704,558. I am recommending an alternate service level that would provide $316,814 in help to that. And so there's the net of that is $1,776,309 available to fund other initiatives without a tax increase. Penny tax equivalent, we'll talk about throughout this, is $4,497,354. That's up from $4,353,669 in the current year. We are so fortunate. We have a very healthy economy. I think that's reflective of the AAA bond rating we got. The fact that we've been able to operate over many years with operating surpluses and without a whole lot of surprises, I think led to that as well. A lot of that is a function of the policies that y'all have identified around debt leveling, around fund balance percentage to hold out, around the whole PAYGO strategy around using reversions and excess dollars for one-time things or for economic development type activities. We did appropriate $15,031,271, which is what we target for reversions. my goal is to work with departments and to encourage them not to spend this money unless they need to. And so if they can, through the year, if they can make things, put things in place that save money or do not spend budget, I want to reward them for that. And so we hope those reversions will come in higher than that. But based on the formula we've been using, that's what that number is. I will say that through the ERP, when we get the budget module in place, we are going to have to reevaluate that because we know how we've done that in the past. This year was tricky because Kyle was having to put the budget really in the old system and the new system. And so he's really had to work through a lot of manual work to try to get this budget in place. There are some really complex calculations about payroll and who's going to sign up for what benefits and what our total benefit cost is going to be and all of that. And so going into next year, this system is going to do some of those calculations that have been manual. So we're going to have to kind of regroup on what those formulas look like moving forward, but we're pretty comfortable that this is a good target and feel good about that. What we hope is that all these detention officer positions are going to get filled and we're not going to have those savings because we really need to get all these detention officer positions filled. We need to get these social worker positions filled. We need to get these nursing positions filled. We need to get the EMT positions filled. And we've got a lot of work to do on that. And as a result of that, we're a little more aggressive in our performance-based pay number this year. And we do have some dollars set aside for not nearly the comp and class type of adjustments we just went through, but kind of more of our normal comp and class review as we go in year over year. School-wise, always a question, and you'll see it in detail. After a lot of conversations, we use sort of a modified formula approach to it. Frankly, as you know, we weren't able to get really good information financially from the schools, and so what we settled on was what does 40% of new property tax and sales tax looks like, not trying to offset it with their average daily membership reduction. So their ADM went down. In a pure formula environment, we would have netted that out. We didn't do that. And so it means about $6.8 million roughly to the schools in terms of new dollars, which historically, if you look back over what we've done for the schools or what you have done for the schools over all these years, is a pretty doggone good year for them. So it's, whether or not that's going to be satisfactory, obviously that'll be a discussion of this board. So that is the budget. Like I say, we're going to go into a ton of detail and answer a lot of questions. You've got the book in front of you if you've got questions in the interim, but feel free to look through it. But we will present kind of in the same format. We have a lot of information when we sit down here next Thursday. That will take us into the following Monday. I think we've got the public hearing set for 6 o'clock, and so a public hearing, and then that next week we'll be in budget sessions Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and see if you come to some type of agreement on what the real spending plan looks like. Last thing I want to say is I very much appreciate being able to serve this board. It is absolutely an honor to present to you a spending plan. It's a big part of what county managers are supposed to do, and I just appreciate the opportunity to do that. As you know, we have an amazing group of people that I get to work with every day, and so the leadership here, and Chantel and Damon, Ashley, Gordon, and Rosalind, kind of in this office, it was just a fun team to work with. But the leadership there is amazing. You've got two great constitutional elected department managers in Sheriff Kimbrough and Register of Deeds Lynn Johnson. They are always great to work with, and so just really appreciate their dedication. I really don't know how to thank Kyle enough this year. He has not slept much in the last 36 hours, and he has put together a fantastic team. That Christopher Ong and Kim Bussey and Michaela and Casey and Will got two new members that came to it fairly quickly. they are going to get challenged throughout this year, and next year they're going to be really, really busy. But Kyle's done a great job with it, and he's particularly managed through. This was a critical year because he was working to design the budget module. Once we realized that was not going to be able to happen, and we weren't able to use the HCM module to do much of the people budgeting, which is about 80% of what we do anyway. And so it has just been a very, very complex year. As soon as we get this budget done and get it in the system, we got to get the budget module finalized, and that will transform. The budget next year will look very different because a lot of it will be generated up out of that, and we got real challenges going into, the challenge. The good thing, but also the challenge is going to be is making sure we got a good transition from assumptions that we use in our current system and assumptions in the new system. But it's a huge tool, and it's going to be very valuable, and the dollars that you spend on that will be put us in a great place. Terry has done a great job, CFO. She is still recovering from trying to get the ERP side of this budget done, or the system done, but her team is doing an amazing job with that. And it's just, and she had a lot of turnover, and so she's in the process of building her team, but really across the whole department manager group. We've got some new folks there, but they are doing a great job, and it really is a team effort. So with that, I present to you the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget, and there's some work to do before it's yours and it reflects your priorities, but hopefully I've given you something that will be a good basis for your discussion. So that, if I can do that, maybe I've done the right thing.
In addition to everything you just said, are there any target dates for ribbon cuttings on county building projects, i.e. the courthouse?
What do you think?
October. It'll be in October.
There's deadening silence.
You said October.
October.
October 1st?
Before Halloween.
Oh. That sounds good.
Thank you very much for this is like it's a somewhat overused analogy of this, trying to drink from a fire hose thing in terms of information, but a lot of information and a lot to digest. But one of the things I would be interested in is in this document, does it actually have your recommended alternative service level request in this document?
It does, and I'll give
you. Yeah, where is it?
It does, and I'll give you a page. It is. Should be. Is it at the? It's not in my book. Is it at the end of the manager's message?
Yeah, at the end of the manager's message.
No, this is not.
There's that spreadsheet that will look familiar to you all.
The continuation budget piece.
Right.
Yeah, the multicolor continuation. It doesn't have your recommendations for alternative service levels.
That's everything on the right. Yeah, it does.
Well,
those are there.
Yeah. Oh. No, those are revenue. Those are revenue numbers.
Well, that's the recommendation.
So I have a question while he's reviewing
please.
that, if you don't mind. I know that you've already gone through the budget conversation with the school systems, and what I thought I heard was at a tune of like $6 million.
I see it is.
Knowing that they had an ax of, what was it, $16 million?
Yeah, and so
If we were to, and I'm just hypothetically asking questions, okay, so I'm not landed anywhere, but if we were to entertain that, the whole ax, what would the tax implication be, if there would be one, is one question. And then second of all, I need the school board to truly understand the importance of knowing their numbers and their budget, especially surrounding the staff. That report has, in next year, I don't want to be here talking about where they are in terms of, well, they need to know how many classified, unclassified, bus drivers, who's feeding who at the cafeteria. They have to know that down to a science for me. So I need them to really hear me when I'm saying this, okay.
Yeah,
So back to that question about
Yeah,
the,
so the Finance Committee met Tuesday, and Superintendent McManus has indicated, she indicated to me she would send the PowerPoint that was part of that presentation, and so as soon as I get it, I will forward it on to you.
Okay.
And we'll have it for discussion next Thursday, and they will be invited to come talk in that discussion next Thursday. My understanding is staff, her and Mr. Tommy Krantz. They actually reduced their ask
Oh, they
based on
did.
that.
Okay, that
And so I
sounds
hadn't
good.
seen it yet, but that was my understanding. And
Perfect.
so I'll get you the delta between what they presented to Finance Committee and where they were.
Okay.
And
that sounds good. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I'm glad that those discussions are happening, so
Mm.
thank you.
Along that line, will that include information in a form that gives us what they had asked for in their categories and what they're asking for now in their categories, and which of their requests are still unfunded?
Right. We got that, the numbers, as we looked at them, they were erroneous. And so when we get those correct numbers, we'll be able to sort that out.
In particular, I will be following up on the questions that I asked them in regard to classified staff, because I believe that we have seen evidence that there are some positions that are badly enough understaffed that we need to see if they can be addressed, but we need accurate information in order to do that.
And I think the other side of that was which ones are within our statutory responsibility around facilities, which one of them are plumbers, mechanics, which one of them are more curriculum-based, and then which ones of them are actually funded, out of their, like, nutrition services, which they've got a separate enterprise fund to pay for them out of. And so, because I think that was some of the confusion in their original submitted budget. It was just everybody was in there. And so I'll be eager to see what Superintendent McManus sends, but I asked her to send it to me, and I just hadn't heard from her. So, and I also have not received their letter of support, which was Commissioner Wisenhut's request, and you asked for that a long time ago and you haven't gotten it. So
Good. Any more questions tonight before we have our big go through the details? Any more questions now?
Just one question. Next week is when we have one big meeting. Doesn't take place on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. It takes place on Thursday. What time?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
That's what.
Commissioner Plyler, Thursday's meeting starts at 2 p.m. normally, just like today.
Mm-hmm.
The budget public hearing is on the following Monday at 6 p.m.
The following Monday.
Mhm.
Okay, I got the impression it was this coming Thursday.
Yeah, but this coming Thursday, we start here at
9 a.m.
Oh, excuse me, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
Yeah.
See, I've confused you even more.
It's okay.
I apologize. So 9 a.m. on Thursday is the detailed budget presentation.
Right.
Followed by a commissioners' meeting and briefing at 2 p.m. We will take a break in between those two for lunch, and then you'll be able to go home after the 2 p.m. meeting and briefing. That following Monday is the budget public hearing at 6 p.m.
Okay, but next week, the Thursday meeting, everything takes place in this room.
Yes, you're correct.
Good.
Well, fourth floor.
I'm sorry.
We're really trying to mess you up. Yeah.
Commissioner Pollard, if you will get here about 8:30, I'll get you where you need to go.
You'll
Okay.
point me to the room.
We were actually on the fourth, we were
Yeah.
going to do the budget detail work session on the fourth floor
So we'll be on the fourth floor,
rather than in
maybe,
Yes.
at
Yes.
9 o'clock,
So if you'll get here about 8:30,
right?
you'll have breakfast, and then we will get everyone where they need to be at 9 o'clock Thursday morning.
And we will talk about the budget.
Yes.
$562 million.
And then we go until we have lunch and we go to somewhere else to eat. And then when that's over with, we come back and have our regular meeting.
Yes. I'm
Correct.
sorry for the confusion.
Chairman, if I may, I'd like to ask Dudley if he would focus and emphasize the marketing department for the Monday scheduled meeting for the community, because again, just because we've said it, we put it online, folks need to know. So I don't know if they could be put in all three newspapers, the Chronicle, the Journal, and
Oh, boy.
Kernersville, whomever. So, yeah. please,
So there
thank
might be
you.
a meeting Monday.
And so not only that, I think we're going to try to do a better job at getting more information just about the proposed budget out in the community. And so you'll see that as well.
So if I got here at 5 o'clock Monday afternoon, I'd be too late or just in time?
I'm going to let our clerk,
Not sure I can
she'll
do
get
any
you squared
better.
away. Yeah, she just,
I'm sorry, what was your question,
I
Commissioner
just
Pollard?
wanted to know if I got here at 5 o'clock Monday, if I'd been too late or too early.
On Monday?
That's what we just talked about,
For the budget
Monday.
public hearing. So there will be a meal just like we have our lunch
So
on Thursdays.
I'll miss lunch at 5 o'clock, right?
Well, we're just going to have a late lunch, early supper. So we're going to have a lupper.
So Monday, it's 12 o'clock until,
No.
we'll get you squared away. We'll get you squared away.
I think, in my mind, I have Monday at noon.
Closed session motion?
Let me say one thing first. I want you all to please come Tuesday, May 30th for our day of action. It's Mental Health Month, and we're going to have a celebration. It's going to be at the Carl Russell Avenue near Highland Avenue in the grass lot, and it's going to be celebrating Stepping Up and Mental Health Court and current folks who are involved in Stepping Up, and the graduates will be there, and we're going to celebrate them because of their accomplishments. We're going to have games, we're going to have food trucks, music, all kinds of activity.
Alcoholic beverages.
And I really would like for you commissioners to be there to help celebrate these folks and their accomplishments.
What
They've
time?
worked really hard from 10 a.m. to 1.
10 a.m. till 1.
There's
So
a program
let me
part.
get
Is it
this
gonna be right at
straight.
the beginning
I've
or
got,
11?
It's going
let's
to be
see,
a program at the very beginning.
The beer-
Monday at noon here, Tuesday at Carl Russell's at 10 o'clock in the morning, and in this room Thursday at 9 o'clock.
Make the motion, sir.
Okay. Yeah,
Is that right?
Not quite, but we'll get you at break, so that'll be close.
Anything else for the good of the order? Thank all of you for your work on the budget, all of you, and staying up late and all of them. Terry, we've had several conversations about all the challenges, so we do want to echo all of the county manager's comments, which were obviously heartfelt, and we share that, and we'll look forward to spending more time next week. So,
All right.
anything else for the good of the order?
Need to ask the board to consider
Closed session, yes.
motion to go into
Thank
closed session to discuss a
Motion to
matter
go into closed session.
relating to the location or expansion of industries or other business in the area served by the public body, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiation pursuant to General Statute 143, 1811A4. Since there's no other business to come before the board, this meeting following the closed session meeting will be adjourned.
Thank you very much.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion adjourned. There we go.